Shalom, and welcome back to Bnei Noach Academy, Thoughts on Life. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. So as a continuation of the series for this week, the week of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the anniversary of the destruction of the Holy Temple, we're going to continue discussing some of the facts and characteristics of the Holy Temple to enhance our yearning because of our appreciation for this great place, what it means to us, and how it applies to our lives, even now that we don't actually have this holy temple in literal existence in the physical sense. So one of course, the most important artifacts, vessels in the holy temple was the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, as described in the book of Exodus, has a very specific dimension, very finite measurements. It has to be this long, it has to be this tall, it has to be this wide, and it had a cover that consisted of a certain amount of gold, and then it had the cherubim, and so on. And it had to all, fit to an exact measurement and criteria. However, in the Talmud, there's a very, very interesting statement regarding this important artifact, and that is that Rabbi Levi says that we have a tradition from going back from our ancestors, meaning going all the way back to Moses, that the ark is, quote, Makom Aron Eino Min Hamidah. The ark did not take up the measurement. In other words, it didn't take up space. What does this mean? Well, when they constructed the ark, as I said, obviously they followed the exact instructions of the Torah, how big it should be, how wide it should be, how tall it should be. However, when they placed it in its place in the Holy of Holies, which of course the Holy of Holies also had to conform to a certain measurement that had a certain finite amount of cubic feet from one wall to the other. Yet, if one was to take a measuring tape and measure from one end of the ark to the wall, and then from the other end of the ark to the wall, meaning physically measure it, one would find as if the ark didn't take up any space. In other words, it did take up space, but yet it didn't take up any space. It was there, and it was not there. Physically, it had a certain measurement, a certain finite dimension, as I said. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been, quote, kosher. It wouldn't have been fit to serve as the ark, because it wouldn't fit the description, the criteria of the Torah. But on the other hand, when placed in its place, it didn't seem to take up any space, as if it wasn't here at all. What is this called? This is called nimna hanimnaot. This is the impossible of the impossibilities, meaning it's there and it's not there, represents the element of godliness, which is beyond the finite and the infinite. If you think about it for a moment, even the infinite realm is still in some way limited because it's infinite. It cannot conform itself. It could not limit itself. It cannot be contained because it's infinite. Finite is obviously something that's very finite, but even something that's infinite in a certain sense, philosophically at least, is limited to a degree. Here we find that there's a third level, so to speak. There's a tier in which the infinite and the infinite come together. How can that possibly be? Because this is God himself. This is coming from the true, ultimate, infinite power of God, which is beyond the finite and the infinite, and therefore it could connect the two. This is a very important lesson for us. When one connects himself to the Torah, one still remains in the world. In fact, we have to live in the reality of the world, the reality, the good reality. Obviously, we don't have to conform to the bad influences. That's, of course, something we need to stay away from. But the reality is that we can, just because we become a little holier, just because we connect ourselves to the Torah, doesn't mean we stop eating, we stop sleeping, we stop going to work, we stop enjoying ourselves, we stop, having entertainment and leisure. On the contrary, we need to do all those things. The Torah says you need to live in reality, and you have to consider the reality. However, at the same time, still being connected to the finite reality, when one connects to the Torah, when one submits themselves to God, to Hashem, one becomes also infinite. One feels like in one hand, you're connected to the world. In the other hand, you're above the world. And this is the power of faith. This is the power of faith and trust in Hashem, that you become elevated from the very world that you are in, according to the Torah.